let's get on some other goodness that came out this week. There was an interview with Tony Dalton, who plays Lalo on Better Call Saul, and this just goes to show you how desperate some companies are getting in our pandemic times. Because I've never been on New York Times without a paywall thing jumping up in front of me, telling me I can't read this article. So I don't know what's going on here, but hey, I'm taking advantage of it. I love this interview. One of the bigger things that came out of this interview with Tony Dalton is the fact that it was his idea to make Lalo charismatic. Because as you know, his particular family, the Salamancas, they're crazy. And when I say crazy, I'm talking about Tuco. I'm talking about, what's the other one's name? Hector, the guy in the wheelchair. They're crazy people. So it was really refreshing for them to have a member of his family that wasn't. He's totally psycho. Don't get me wrong. He's totally a sociopath. But he's the type of guy, and they even say in this article that you would sit down at a bar and have a drink with. But he's totally bat shit insane. But there's just a lot of things in this interview. Let me just find something because I only read this article once. Yeah, but they asked him right here. For a cold-blooded sociopath, Lalo is such a charming guy. Was it your idea to play him that way? The charm part was mine, to be honest. I had played a hitman in the series for HBO Latino America called Sir Avila. He had zero personality. If he was standing against the wall, you couldn't tell him apart from the wall. My character was the lead and he was invisible. So there you go. Sometimes, I've always said from my few times where I actually made movies in film school, it's wholly a collaboration making movies. You'll have ideas coming from actors. You have ideas coming from the sound guy, for God's sake. Everybody contributes. You'll have ideas that come to you in the edit. You might have to go back and reshoot something to add something or clarify something in the edit. So, and you might have somebody doing your edit, or in my case, I do all my editing, but I did have a sound designer on the student film I did. I did have a guy to kind of guide me on that. So you'll have input from so many different people. And I love actors like this. Actors who take a character and just run with it. So that was his idea. And I like this little, what he says. He says, I thought that with Lalo, I need to turn this around, do something different. I remember an interview with director Shekhar Kapoor, who was asked about casting Jeffrey Rush, who was playing yet another bad guy in Elizabeth. And Kapoor said something like, yeah, but this guy kills with a smile. That always stayed in my mind. So this is a very interesting article. I encourage anybody who watches Better Call Saul to read this. And of course, Lalo was first mentioned in Breaking Bad when Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, they want to get Saul to work for them, so they take him out in the desert and threaten to kill him. And the first thing that Saul says is, "You're not from Lalo." He thinks Lalo has been sent these guys to kill him, and we don't know who Lalo is. We don't find out until Better Call Saul. So the fact that he's so menacing at the same time as being so charismatic was just a great creation by this actor. Some other tidbits, the fact that he created this backstory for the character. They asked him, have you ever discussed Lalo's backstory with the writers? Sort of, a little bit. We've kind of come up with something that works for the story. For example, one reason I don't do him with a thick Mexican accent is because I think he's kind of a second generation narco. Now, let me just say right there, Tuco had the same kind of background, I feel, because he also speaks with a perfect American accent, but he also speaks fluent Mexican or Spanish, I should say. So this is just kind of a carryover, I feel like, from that character. So he goes on to say he might have gone to a good school in Texas or Arizona or something because his family had money. He grew up with a little of the American way of life. He's a narco-rich kid. That's different from a poor farmer who stumbles across some marijuana. So I thought that was very interesting that we think of the stereotypical Mexican cartel guys as having these thick Mexican accents, but they could just as easily have been brought up here because there's such a big Mexican population in the United States, from what I can remember, 11 to 12 million people. So, and the drug trade has been going on for quite a while. So the fact that he could be a second generation narco kid was fascinating, and that kind of explains everything about him, I think. And he also says this about Lalo's background. I have a feeling that Lalo's mom is a gringa. That's why he's a little bit whiter. He speaks a little bit better. That's just my own crazy character development thing. I think the cartel sends Lalo all over the place. Maybe he was in San Diego before. He's moving up the ranks. That's how he operates. And not having a family is one reason he's so carefree. It's why he's such a charming guy in Albuquerque, why he has such a laid-back demeanor. He doesn't care where he is. So these are all very interesting things that he came up with. And, he also collaborated with writers with. And, as I said in my review of Better Call Saul Season 5, he has pretty much become my favorite villain, even over Gus Fring. Now, that's not the discount Gus Fring. Gus Fring is a great character, too. They're both great characters, but he kind of overshadowed Gus. And another thing, in fact, Tony Dalton has great respect for Gus Fring. He actually says in the last line of this interview, Gus Fring is one of the greatest villains in television history. I would say he is the greatest in television history. Some would probably say that Tony Soprano is. I think Gus Fring would totally kill Tony Soprano in a scenario, because one of the things that Vince Gilligan had brought up in an interview that Tony Dalton actually alluded to is that Gus is playing chess while Lalo is playing checkers. So even though I like Lalo a lot, mostly because of this actor's portrayal of him, it's also obvious that Gus is a lot more smarter than Lalo. So it'll be interesting to see, because we know Gus Fring is going to win, or else he wouldn't be the big shot he is in come Breaking Bad. So that part of the scenario we know how it's going to play out. Well, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. We know what's going to happen. We know that Lalo is either going to be killed or go to prison or something next season. We just don't know the how that's going to happen yet. We know the why, but we don't know the how. So I just thought all of this was, as somebody who always dreamed about making films, who made a couple of films, who's written stories, I just love actors like that. I would love to work with this guy if I ever did anything in the future, because he's obviously a very intelligent, very engaging actor. Probably one of the best of his generation, I would say, at this point. And hopefully, like somebody like Pedro Pascal, who got that one little character in Game of Thrones, I hope he blows up after this show, because he deserves it. And he is very talented. So that's all I'll say about that. Go read his articles on the New York Times. Like I said, right now, it looks like the New York Times isn't pushing their paywall, which is a good thing.